All right, hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Home Buying Secrets. Today we're going to cover a couple of topics that we started discussing a few episodes ago, which is other ways to invest your money into real estate. So, one thing as an amateur that I sometimes see on cable TV is all of these, like house improvement and then selling or flipping shows. Frank, this is kind of your bread and butter. You do this a lot. Like, how does one get into this process, and what goes into it, like end to end?
Man, getting into it, it's hard to say. I kind of had a unique path. I basically got offered the job to work with a group of investors to, at the beginning, just be their list agent. They were buying homes at the courthouse trustee sales auctions. So my job was to go and drive the property, see if they were occupied, if they were vacant, just a basic condition of the property. And then based off of that, we would value them and buy them. So that's kind of how I got into it. Now I manage all aspects of acquiring the properties, the rehab, and then the selling of the property, the disposition. But I've seen other people get into it just where they watch a TV show, they have a little cash, and they go look for that crappy home in a good neighborhood, buy it, remodel it, and resell it. So it's pretty simple to get into it. I'd say the biggest thing you got to have is money, capital, to be able to put a down payment on it, and then the holding costs while you're remodeling, and then obviously funding the rehab.
Okay, well, I think you made it sound pretty easy, but a couple of episodes ago we talked about the Zillow situation as well. So they were trying to do this at scale and maybe with an algorithm, and they have all the right data theoretically. Like, hey, this is the right area, this is the right market. I want to purchase this house. Could you talk a little bit about? I think selection kind of makes sense, and maybe people can do that part, but uh, maybe let's dive into how long it takes to rehab a property. And I know each property is different, right? But
Yeah.
just general ballpark. And what is the size of your team? And what are the stages you need to do after you picked a property? Like, for example, is it like having your construction folks go in and take a look? You inspect it. You mentioned having like an interior designer like plan things out. What are the basic steps?
Yeah. So timeline wise, if it's a condo, and there's nothing you got to do on the outside of it, mainly just inside cosmetic stuff, 45 days, maybe 60 days. If it's going to be a single family detached house, now you got to work on a front yard, a backyard, maybe there's some roof, some windows, easily 4 months. We've bought some stuff that there's issues with the property. Maybe there's grading violations or illegal additions. Now you're dealing with the cities. Gosh, I have some that are going on a year and a half. COVID definitely slowed that down with inspectors weren't coming out to the properties doing inspections, and that was backlogged. But when I go and purchase a property, if it's a condo, I'm going to do about a 60-day pro forma on when I buy it to when I go to put it back on the market. If it's an SFR, I'm usually doing 4 to 6 months from when I buy it to when I resell it. So generally the way it works is I work with agents that will bring me properties. They'll say, here's an address, Frank. All I want is the address, because I kind of work it backwards. I take the address, say, okay, this is how much I think I can sell the house for. In my head, I look at it, okay, this is roughly what I think the rehab value is going to be, and then plug in those two numbers and I get what I can pay for the property. So once I get that, then I start working with this agent to kind of negotiate, see where we go. Once I get it, the contract accepted, then yeah, immediately I walk it with my contractor so I can basically firm up my rehab number. If I think, okay, it's going to be around 75, I walk with him. Oh man, it's 100. Okay, well, I go back, hey, look at my budget's higher than I thought. Will you reduce the price? No. Okay, move on to the next one. Yes. Okay, great. If I'm 75 and they're at 80, all right, well, I'm going to take the deal. So once I get that rehab number firmed up with my contractor, then I'll come back again with my contractor and my designer, who's also my stager, and we'll talk about simple floor plan changes. We're not necessarily adding square footage, or changing the floor plan of the house. But if we can open up a kitchen wall to make it a little more inviting to the living room, or maybe the master, or maybe there isn't a master bathroom, but there's room to add one within the existing footprint of the house, things like that. Because I'm the real estate agent. I'm the one that's going to be standing there in the open houses. I'm going to be the one showing the property to buyers. So I have my little ideas that I bounce off of the interior designer. And sometimes she'll be like, no, you don't want to take that wall out because then there's nowhere to put a TV or a couch. But what if we just took a portion of the wall out on this side? Little things like that. And then the contractor says, yes or no, that's possible. Or you could pretty much do anything you want, but hey, move this over here. It's like, okay, well, now we need to move the toilet and the plumbing and the electrical. And now your $80,000 rehab bid is now 95. So, and just kind of those moving parts, figuring those things out. And then after that, we're still in escrow at this point, close escrow, rekey the property, and then have the contractor start on it. Obviously, first step is demo, do all the demo. Once they get that out, then they start doing the rough electrical plumbing. Once that's done, then they start putting the house together, can put the fixtures in, the counters, the cabinets, windows, things like that. And once it's done, get it clean, stage pictures, and then it's my turn to sell it.
That sounds like a lot of work, and frankly, for me personally, there's no way I would do that. But Jason, I think you've encountered a couple of clients who may be in this boat where perhaps they live in a property over maybe a year or longer, and they slowly improve this. Maybe not on like a full professional contractor level, but they could do some minor improvements. So my question to you is, how common is this? Have you seen from your clients? And number two, any stories you can share about them being successful with it or not?
Yeah, so I don't have a ton of clients who, I guess, specifically move in with this in mind. I've definitely heard of people that that's kind of their goal, right? They're going to find something just like Frank talked about, ugly house, nice area. They're gonna find that. Their goal is to move in it, live in it for 2 years, and over time, basically remodel the entire thing, right? So not like a mad dash where Frank's trying to get in and out as soon as possible. He's got holding costs, all of that for these types of people. That's their house, right? So they're going to live there. That's you got to have a place to live. So it kind of kills two birds with one stone. So if you do that, yeah, then you can build some equity in it over time and then sell it and to kind of move on to the next one. But I don't really have any clients, like I said, or a ton of clients that kind of go specifically at that. The way that I see it is just a lot of people when they're looking to buy a house, they just want to find something that, maybe they can build some value into it by doing some remodeling, or maybe they just want to find something that they can customize a little bit more. I know for myself right now, I'm in the middle of looking for a new house, and that's one of the main things for me is I would prefer something where I can go in, do the work and make it my own, especially just because I've got, kind of all sorts of random ideas that, most typical, families, they don't want their homes the way that I would want mine. So, I just want that customization. But yeah, I don't see too many people doing it as a specific strategy, more so just, it naturally happens over time.
Okay. From a paperwork perspective, what are the limitations? Are there any, whether it's actually like law or just a mandate from the person writing the loan or the company writing the loan? Is like a minimum live-in period that usually a borrower has to sign for?
Yeah, so there's a couple different things that the lender is going to impose when you're looking at renovating a property. So first, in terms of occupancy, as a primary residence, you're basically signing on your loan documents that you intend to live in the property for 12 months, right? So you intend to live there for 12 months is really the key. So I've definitely seen people where they'll get into loans and then end up moving in 6 months, 4 months, 8 months. I've seen it all over the place. At that point, if you're there less than 12 months, it's really a judgment call on the lenders. Usually, though, if you're paying them off, if you're paying the loan off because you're moving to another property, there's not really too much that they're going to be able to do to you at that point. Kind of where you run into troubles, or where I see it, is where folks will refinance a property as a primary residence and then buy a new one. That's more so where you see that 12-month rule kick in. And in that case, it's all up to the lender, right? So I've seen it where they'll be okay with it if, you know, somebody has a really good reason. Hey, we just had a child, we refinanced this place, had a new baby, and didn't realize it was going to be so much work. We decided we needed our mother to move in, and so we had to buy a new house. You know, I've seen things like that, and they'll sign off on it. I've seen it the other way where, you know, somebody will just refinance, and then a month later they're looking at buying something new, and the underwriter's not having it, and they'll basically even go as far as making them refinance the property they just did and turn it into an investment as opposed to a primary residence, which can be a real pain in the butt, especially if you just paid a bunch of money to get that loan. You know, you got to redo it, take a higher interest rate. So that's not fun at all. So that's one of the, you know, or not one of the, but that's the issue you see in terms of, you know, that 12-month occupancy rule. The bigger issue that we see when people are trying to renovate properties, you know, trying to basically do what Frank's doing, is problems with the habitability of the property. So a lender doesn't want a property that you can't move into, right? They don't want something that is not livable. So if there's, you know, construction going on, construction is the big one that kills it. People will just start a project, maybe remodeling a bathroom, and then they want to refinance a property. Appraiser will get out there and say, hey, your entire bathroom's pulled apart, you know, there's missing toilet, the walls are down, electrical's exposed, things like that. And at that point, that will kill a loan in its tracks. So, you know, that's the biggest thing on properties that need some work. You know, if it's livable, it just is an ugly house, that's totally fine. You can get a loan on that. You can remodel it, and you can be totally fine. But I do have a lot of times, especially first-time home buyers, where they really are, in this market, I've seen it a lot too, where they're searching for a deal. And so they think, hey, why don't I just buy something and you know, do a bunch of work to it, and I can build some equity into it. And especially I'll see them when they start their searches, and they'll start sending me properties that are, you know, just completely just destroyed. You cannot live in this property. And that's where you run into issues. You got to be able to live in it. You know, it can't be a construction zone. And on that, you can get financing.
Wow. I think, you know, I had challenges with my property as well, but at least it's new, so I'll have to deal with that aspect of it. So Frank, back to you. Generally speaking, what kind of margins are you seeing when you you know, rehab a place and sell it?
Very thin, super competitive out there. On my lower price point stuff in hot cities, 8.5%, you know, if I can squeeze 10% on a bigger project, then I'm happy. But yeah, it's really thin, very thin margins, 8 to 10%.
Okay. And in terms of the holding period, do your investors typically well, care or look into that? For example, you know, you said it might take you 4 to 6 months to rehab a house. And once again, we've been in a, I guess, good market, so it's easy to sell. There's not enough inventory. But let's say we were in an opposite situation where you can't get rid of a house for 12 months. Do you get pressure from your investor to lower the price? Like, have you been in that environment, or have you always been this like limited supply environment?
Yeah, of course. There's been markets before where we're going to be quicker to reduce the price and not wait a year. But yeah, absolutely. When I started in 2011, houses were still selling fairly quickly, but we had a lot more to manage, and there were a lot more houses out there. So, you know, put it on the market, you know, get a temperature check after 2 weeks, maybe 30 days. Now it's 45, maybe 60. Now we start reducing the list price 5, 10, depending on the price point, $15,000 until it sells. So it wouldn't take us a year, because we would be reducing the price, you know, quicker to sell it faster.
So last time we talked a bit about your kind of stager slash interior design, but we didn't cover too much about the contractor. So when you say the contractor, how many people is it? Is it one person, or is it like multiple people?
Yeah, so there's, depending on the size of the project or the scope of the work, I have 2 or 3 licensed contractors, and they have their full crews. Like, I don't even worry about it. You know, they're electricians, they're plumbers. Heck, you know, if concrete needs to be torn out and repoured, they get their concrete guy out there. You know, if there's pool work, equipment damage, you got to get a pool guy out there, you know, a roofer. window guys. So they manage that stuff for me. And then even on the smaller projects, it may not be necessarily a licensed contractor. Call it a handyman. To do kind of smaller amounts of work. Same thing too. They have their crew. And I get people that ask me like, hey Frank, I do demo. Next time you get a house, like let me do the demo portion. Or hey, I saw you need to build a fence here at the house, or you need to build a deck. I don't get involved with like the actual who the trade is going to do that. And I walk the property with my contractor, with my rehab person. They handle it. So I don't want to go and be like, oh, here's my friend that can do the demo. So now so you add more moving parts, and it ends up, it gets complicated. So I let my rehab guys pick who they want to do stuff. They're tradesmen.
What does the licensing do or help with? Like if they do something wrong, are they like, can you go kind of report them and they're obligated to fix it? What is, or is the licensing just demonstrating that they have certain skills?
Yeah, well, it's nicer to kind of stand on as a real estate broker saying, hey, look at the work done at this property was done in a workmanlike manner by a licensed contractor, not just, Johnny Rehabber, I guess. And, and you'd hope the better contractors will guarantee their work, and kind of stand behind it. So that's why it's, especially on the higher price point stuff, in situations where, you are going to the city and getting work permitted and adding bathrooms, like you need a licensed contractor. Not every situation, but I'm not going to fill out the application and I don't know all the terms and the steps. So I'm going to rely on my contract, just like my clients, rely on a licensed real estate broker to help them find and go through the transaction rather than, do it themselves. Just the experience level.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So let's talk about the, not everything in life works out. So, and maybe this has or hasn't happened to you. What happens if there's a disagreement with the contractor and you believe that their work wasn't good enough or they did something wrong? Is it more of you just have to talk to them about it and hope they'll fix it, or is there something kind of like official, like paperwork you can go through, like a contract that gets them to fix things?
Yeah, I want to say I'm a little, I don't want to call it luckier, but the 3 or 4 rehab contractor crews that I work with, they get all of our business. So for the most part, they're, they know that they're going to get another job, or they're working on 6 jobs. So they're not going to just hose me. But I have clients where I sell them a house and then they go to do their improvements. And yeah, I mean, I've heard horror stories where lawsuits, work doesn't get completed. They pay for it and it doesn't get completed, or it takes way too long, or it doesn't come out right, or the sides keep going, like, you're not putting in the right counters and I don't like these cabinets, and go back and forth. Luckily in my stuff, like I said, I've been working with the same guys, the same group. They have a lot of jobs they're managing. They're going to get more jobs. So I haven't really run into those problems, but yeah, I kind of went through it pretty quickly. But right before the property gets staged, cleaned, and pictures, I do my final walkthrough. I flush every toilet, open up every drawer, look for paint splatter and windows that are cracked, things that they should have taken care of, that they may have missed, and rather than it come up like, oh, this bottom cabinet drawer wasn't installed right, and then it comes up in an inspection, it's like, oh, if they didn't install one drawer in the bathroom, like what else should we be looking for? So I do a final walkthrough. Sometimes I'll do it by myself. Other times I'll do it with that contractor, and we'll talk and we'll point stuff out. We'll take blue tape and mark it up. And then his guys will come back through and touch up paint, fix what we find and talk about. Or it's just like, hey, we did one of our properties that had this really pink, ugly tile stairs, like to the entry of the house. So we removed it all and the concrete looked pretty bad. So paid somebody to come and clean all the old mortar and chipped it off, and did this really cool where they floated it in concrete and then stamped it and then stained it. But it didn't look right. So I went out there and I was like, yo, this is the entrance to a $1.3 million house. Like, they painted the top, but didn't paint the side of this. I was like, what? So yeah, they had their guy come out there and do it right. But little things like that, because like I said, I'm walking these properties with the buyers and they're looking and pointing out everything. So it's kind of the mentality I take when I do my final walkthrough.
No, that's great. I think, we've recorded a couple episodes now, and one of my biggest takeaways is that a lot of money is involved in any stage of real estate. You want to go buy a house, a condo, you want to renovate it, you want to rehab it. Anything can go wrong at any stage, and the financial consequences are pretty big because it's one of the biggest purchases of someone's life usually, and which is why I'm glad I'm working with you two, because one of my friends, he lives in Santa Monica. He has a house there, and he just moved back in after a year because they were working on his attic and his floors, and apparently they just did it completely wrong. And he had to negotiate with them where he had to pay for half to just get all new floors done because they wouldn't pay for it themselves. And he's just been like, his house looks like a construction zone, and he's pissed off. He had to, like, out of his own pocket, move somewhere else for months. Like, it disrupted his, like, family life, his kid's school schedule. And I was like, hey, you should have just asked me, because I know a guy, Frank, and we at least maybe could give you some advice. He's like, oh my God, because usually if you're just doing it yourself, you deal with it once.
Yeah.
So you have zero relationship with usually with the person you're working with. And if you get the nightmare scenario, now he's just like out a lot of money and time, and his wife's pissed off.
Oh yeah.
So
yeah, you definitely when it comes to contractors, stuff like with that, it helps to know somebody that used them, it was successful, now they can refer that contractor to you.
okay, great. Is there any other topics you guys want to cover, whether it's rehab and sell or live in and renovate?
I got a question for you, Frank. So, kind of like our audience is people looking for houses and looking for, maybe, hey, what's a way that I can add some value, into a property that I'm purchasing? And obviously right now is a crazy market where, like you said, margins are super thin, probably thinner than they've been in a while, with all the demand. Do you ever look to maybe get a little bit more, I don't know if it's creative with kind of what you're doing? Like, are you looking for like a house that maybe has, two bedroom, two bath, but the bedrooms are really big, there's a lot of square footage, and then maybe you're going to turn one of the bedrooms into two and turn it into a 3-bedroom, and now your comps are 3-bedroom properties instead of 2? Are there any kind of like creative strategies like that you're looking for, or is it more binary, just this is what it is, I'm going to fix it up, get in, get out, and move on to the next one?
Yeah, right here, right now, for the most part, it's get in, get out. We don't necessarily want to add square footage, but we'll, stay within the footprint of the home and open up walls, maybe add a master bathroom if it'll fit. I had a property in Fullerton. It had 2 bathrooms, did not have a master, and the hallway bathroom was massive. So it made sense. We were able to split that in half and put a and use half of that to put a master bathroom in. But don't get me wrong, there's a lot of people out there that they look for those value adds. Hey, it's a 2-bedroom. Can we add a 3rd bedroom? Can we add a 3rd bedroom with the bathroom? Can we make it a proper master? We just the holding costs, the hoops that you have to jump through with the cities to do that, it just keeps it on the books a little longer. Sometimes cities will just kick the can down the road and make you do everything to the property. So we don't necessarily do that route. Another huge value add that I see a lot in LA County are ADUs, accessory dwelling units. And that is, depending on what the city will allow you to do, converting a garage. It's basically making a second house on the property or an apartment. So taking an existing garage and adding plumbing, electrical to it and making it its own little studio. Outright just putting a building in your backyard. And there's companies that will do that. Now the process is quite a bit. They're making it easier and easier, but it's a lot of work. It's like a year plus in plans and engineering. But it's really popular in LA, and you get a lot of money for those, for sure.
All right, guys, thanks for another great episode. Take care.